today I'm going to talk about the topic, how do our brains process speech? So how do you represent speech like this speak? And how do you understand the languages, the words you are speaking, and how do you understand the other person speaking? For example, how do you understand what I'm talking about? So we can discover how our brains actually process the speeches. We might think that because we learn a lot about languages, we learn how to understand words, then we actually know how to process speeches, but not really. So how to understand it is actually a deeper accent to what we are talking about today. How do our brains process speeches? First, the key points of the talk are, firstly, we have the four things: speed and accuracy, our best guess system, meaningful comprehensions, and lastly is the speech processing. Firstly, let's talk about what is speed and accuracy. First, the average person knows 10,000 of words, most of which, when spoken, last less than a second. The brains match quickly and accurately identify the correct words from the huge range of options. For example, when you says cap, German minds go to captain or maybe capital, and then the full word emerges. Firstly, is that when we are thinking about words, our minds are actually generated lots of options, lots of possibility in our minds real quickly, less than a second. When you see a word start with something, your minds are actually compelling. You talk about pre-comprehension, you talk about pre-doing this, or maybe there are words that are actually start with a pronoun, then you accurately form a word or identify the word from the huge range of options. In our minds, obviously when we're looking or actually when we're hearing something, our minds boost words like possibility or explosion of meanings, explosion of possibility in our minds. And also this is in 98% of the time. Why is this? Firstly, when we identify or choosing a possibility word in all option, we get to assessing of 98% of the time are actually correct. Moving on to secondly is the best guess system. In our minds, there is a really unique kind of thing. Like the brain doesn't just passively receive sounds or like sound wave or something into our ear. It's rapidly make best guesses by comparing the incoming auditory signal against the possibility of what's known. So, how do you ever do like sign signal in words or like reading comprehension, or maybe like mainly how you understand passages? So, when you talk about talking, talking is different from reading comprehension, but it's also similar to signing comprehension. Like when you're using hand gesture to get sign, it's also one similar way. But now, our brain doesn't actually just receive sounds, but words come into our ears, and we feel like this word, this is word, that. But actually, our brain doesn't just passively receive the sounds itself, it also rapidly make a best guesses. When you have like a sentence over here, you guess is what come next, because that is a reading comprehension. When you see this, what is the most best shapes are like puzzle pieces together to fit with the next sentences. Then you feel like it's actually the best auditory signal against the possible word it's actually known. Moving on to the meaning comprehension. What does it mean? Integrating the organization of words and meaningful ideas and contexts. The brain remake efficiency of programming speech that into experience, allowing it to integrating complex sound patterns and resolve the ambitions of real life. Firstly, when you talk about the meaning comprehension, which is when you talk about art, like when you receive a word from a sentence, you got the complex signal and the organized word and meaningful ideas. So when we know that there are like an average person know about 1,000 words, then it's like the maximum kind of words are like 1,000 or millions of words, and the normal human, the average people, or the person knows about 10,000 words, and those words means that you are actually know what the meaning is. When you receive a words or sentences that you do know, it's actually receiving you understand what the passages are. So for example, how do you know what I'm talking about? Because you don't have the vocabulary, you have the comprehension to actually understand what I'm saying about. So when you integrate with organization of word and meaningful ideas or context, the brain remakers like a remarkable efficiency and programming speech. So when they are programming speech, what it's about, our brains think about what is the main point. You think about what is the main point of this talking about, what is the most efficiency, what is the more likely things that happens next, and what happens in that comprehensions or in that kind of like situation. More likely, you know what it is. your minds or your thoughts actually generates getting tons of options, you're getting the complex idea, the efficiency, and progress in your speech to developing the experience, allowing it to interpret the complex sounds pattern. So our minds have the context. So how about this solution? So about when you have after you listen to speech, you have the wide vocabulary in your own minds, in your brains. There are tons of words. Then after you listen to another speeches, you get a more wide range, but you're also storing the old information, the old words in your brain. And how can you keep the old stuff, like the new stuff, or the new vocabulary words? When you have a new vocabulary words like boxes, they are secretly in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where I store the new words to the storing this money, or for example money and coins in one places, and they're also storing this part into the other part of the brain. They help you to remember things of both the news and the old words. After getting a lot of sleep, they're more likely to get the open wide, and when sleeping, the new words actually intervene with the old ones, and then it's actually in the morning when you comes up, you realize that you have bursting or explosion kinds of different kind of information. You're bursting of explosion of the meanings and words in our own vocabulary word. The thing is that the speech processing the auditory context register the raw sound more recognizing and bring the sound patterns to brain dictionary. So the brain have its core like the brain dictionary. When you are listening to other thing, you get the brain dictionary that are generating what the other words means, what this word means, like a dictionary. Your brain generates this speech because your brain wants you to understand what that words mean and how it's actually generated. And your own have a brain dictionary. Not every words that you know the meaning, just general meanings of that. And then also lastly is that the process speech auditory is to register the raw sound. You know how your brains actually activate this. I'm going to learn about how our brains process speech and how our brain really process speech in those real time. When you wake up in the morning, you notice that your brain's supposed are emotion, but what is the world explosion of the world of knowledge or languages in our world. After listening, you learn about how do our brains process speeches and how speech accuracy is the best guess system, meaningful comprehension, and lastly, why the speech processing auditory cognitive register to raw sounds. This is helping to know how much your brains actually process speech and how to understand it better. So listen as anything for listening, and goodbye.